The story behind League of Legends, Episode 13, Icathia. Icathia is a lost city bordering Shurima in the southeast part of the southern continent. History. Shuriman subjugation. Axima, the last of the Mage Kings, was the final ruler to fall before the Shuriman Sun Empress when she led her golden host of men and gods into the kingdom of Icathia. Ever since then, over thousands of years, Icathia was a vassal state controlled by Shurima, its people subjugated and enslaved. The ruins of its city's walls stood as a reminder to their defeat. Fall of Icathia. During the last days of Icathia, the once noble warrior order of Quahari was rebuilt to retake the city. The city had been filled with screams, as baying crowds chased down and murdered every Shuriman official they could find. Resentment for centuries of humiliating laws intended to eradicate Icathian culture and brutal executions for breaking those laws came to a head in one blood-filled day of violence. It didn't matter that most of these people were merely scriveners, merchants and tithe-takers. All servants of the Sun Emperor were killed. Sun Disk effigies were pulled from rooftops and smashed by cheering crowds. Shuriman scriptwork was burned and their treasuries looted. The statues of dead emperors were desecrated. A day after the massacre, an army of stone wrights, laborers and thaumaturges were hefting giant blocks of freshly hewn granite into place of the city's ruined walls with windlass mechanisms that crackled with magic. 10,000 men and women were conscripted to defend the city, clad in armor of boiled leather and armed with axes, picks, and spears. 3 blocks of deep-ranked infantry formed the bulk of their line. Shuriman corpses were impaled upon wooden stakes driven into the earth at its base, and flocks of carrion birds circled overhead. A silken pavilion of crimson and indigo had been raised at its summit. Robed priests surrounded it, each one weaving intricate patterns in the air with their star metal staves. The Sun Emperor turned his gaze upon this rebellious satrapy and marched east. Its 5 armies consisted of tens of thousands of men, riders on golden mounted chariots ahead of the army. Heavy wagons the size of river barks bore strange war machines that resembled navigational astrolabes. Spinning globes orbited by flaming spheres and crackling lightning. Robed priests came with them, each with a flame-topped staff and an entourage of blinded slaves. At the heart of the army were the god warriors. 9 ascended, led by their leader Setaka, were armored in bronze and jade. The battle was long and bloody. The Icathians would have been overrun by Shurima's might of their army and their god warriors if not for the combined power of their mages. What happened next sealed Icathia's fate. The pavilion exploded with forking traceries of light. Arcing loops of purple energy ripped into the sky and lashed down like crashing waves. The force of the blast threw everyone into the ground. The sky, once bright and blue, was now the color of a week-old bruise. Unnatural twilight held sway. A nightmarish light, sickly blue and ugly purple, smothered the world, pressing down from above and blooming up from somewhere far below. An abyss that bled purple light tore open amid the Shurimans, and Setaka was overcome by whipping cords of matter. She fought to free herself with wild sweeps of her blade, but the power of the void proved too much for her. The pulsing, glowing light spread over her body like a hideous cocoon. Slick coils rising from the earth, or from the very air itself, to seize the flesh of mortals. Men and women were swept up and enveloped, bodies dissolved as the tendrils of foul energy overwhelmed them. Aftermath. At the end of the battle, the city was laid waste by the void, its inhabitants consumed by the rift or scattered, the land forever scarred by the event. Culture. Icathia itself is considered mythical by most, though those who believe it once existed were certain that the sands had long since devoured whatever remained. The believers generally agree that the lost city was located somewhere in the southern half of Valoran, though details beyond this are almost entirely unreliable hearsay. Many explorers have struck out to discover Icathia, but the only fact their findings universally corroborate is that just about everywhere southeast of Shurima is malevolent, ominous, and spooky. One of the only 2 living individuals to have been to Icathia and whose testimony may be considered anything more than mere delusion is Cassigan, the Voidwalker. It is said that he found his way to the Forgotten City following the scant breadcrumbs hidden in ancient texts. Within a decaying Cyclopean city, Kassadin found secrets of the kind that he will never share, secrets that made him quake with fear at the visions of things to come that were thrust upon him. The power of the place threatened to consume him forever, but Kassadin took the only route available to him in order to survive. He let the void inside him. Miraculously, he was able to overcome the alien urges that went with it, and he emerged as something more than human. The other individual that's said to have been to Icathia is Zener, the prophet of the void. He claims to have traveled there at the urging of an unknown entity that he alone, as a gifted seer, could sense. The main substance of his report of Icathia, besides his demented visions of yawning chaos and his communion with the entity that beckoned him thence, consists of an alien geometry of a ruined city adorned with bizarre crumbling obelisks and the giant decaying idols of dark and horrific gods. As he looked upon them, his eyes, seeing what others cannot, and what none should, were filled with the essence of the void. Government. Icathia was once a magocracy, with free citizens ruled by the mage kings. This is in stark contrast with Shuriman society, wherein a few slave masters owned and exploited their slaves as laborers, foot soldiers, and occasionally advisors. Military. Kohari. The Kohari order consisted of deadly and dedicated life wards of the Icathia mage kings. However, the order failed to prevent the Shurima Sun Empress from deposing the mage kings. Many lost their lives fighting Shuriman invaders, while surviving members committed suicide, thus ending the order. In a last-ditch attempt to overthrow the Shuriman oppression and reinstate another Icathia mage king, many Icathians adopted the occupational name Kohari, revived the order, and fought besides thaumaturges. Unfortunately, thaumaturges unleashed the void, causing the ultimate destruction of Icathia. Since the destruction, only one known member of the Kohari has remained alive up to the modern ages. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to share video and subscribe us channel.